The day started out very ordinary. Kelly got up at 7, made breakfast, fed her husband and walked him to work. Then it became a habit too. The doorbell rang. My mother-in-law stood on the doorstep. "I even took a sick leave," she complained. "Everything. I've been dizzy for so long." "It's all from nervous tension. Pour me some coffee, girl." "How about some tea?" Kelly asked. "If you're dizzy, it's probably the blood pressure that's out of whack." No, just coffee for me," said Miranda. In the hallway, she paused at the mirror, ran her hands through her blonde curls. "Cleansing, I don't want to sleep. Have you been to the doctor? Why should I?" "It's all purely nervous. A sedative," Kelly suggested it. "Would you like a wasteland at the CP?" "I hope." Veloso smiled at his mother-in-law, that he won't need one. "You know what the reason is. I'm really counting on your discretion." "Tell me, have you thought about your pregnancy?" "I have," Kelly replied calmly, and set her favorite cup on the table. "Miranda." The mother-in-law refused to drink from mugs for some reason and brought her own cup to her son's house. The translucent pink porcelain was as fragile as her shell. Kelly was always afraid of accidentally breaking it, so she kept it away from other dishes. And for some reason, her mother-in-law thought that with this gesture, her daughter-in-law was showing her husband's mama face. In the family of alienation, Kelly in psychology was poorly understood and therefore did not confirm it, but did not deny it. But the daily visits from her mother-in-law were a burden. That's for sure. Miranda, thought and thought again and finally decided that I will give birth. "I'm sorry if I upset you. He should be pursuing a career, not washing diapers," her mother-in-law said. Kelly shrugged. "Nobody washes diapers nowadays. They use diapers nowadays, and there's no reason to wash them," she said. "Soiled and thrown away. You're suggesting that my son work for those disposable diapers of yours for diapers? Do you realize what you're saying?" "I'm not saying anything, and that's even worse." "Kelly, I really don't understand. Why is it that everything can be arranged in a wonderful way? And you're stalling. I'm not me. How can you be so irresponsible not just to someone, but to your own husband, and not just to him, but to his mom? I have my own dreams too, and I'm entitled to them. I am the one who gave birth and raised the man you are married to." The mother-in-law paused to catch her breath and looked at the girl with a look of incomprehension and great longing. Kelly waited patiently. "Okay," Miranda continued. "I'm not going to ask you how you dared to get pregnant at a time like this. Personally, I don't believe it, but I'm willing to accept that it was an accident." "Why was it an accident?" Kelly asked. "Why not patterns? For example, a man and a woman get married together, live in the same house and sleep together, and then they have children. Is that normal?" "It sounds normal to me, separately," said the mother-in-law. "When a woman has enough sense to understand that after the birth of a child, she will sit on maternity leave, and the man will have to provide for the whole family alone, want Kelly to provide for 3, one of which requires a huge amount of funds: clothing, feeding, diapers, stroller, a crib, and a bunch of other essentials. Yeah, that alone would take up an entire paycheck. And then there's you. It's not like you're trying to breathe air. You might gain weight after you give birth, and then you'll need a new closet. Maternity pay." "What maternity pay?" Miranda shrugged it off. "On your miserable salary. Even if you add in your allowance, it wouldn't even be enough to buy food. And after all, you have to pay the monthly utility bills. You didn't think about that. I'm used to thinking ahead." "That's amazing," Kelly quipped. "How did you decide to become a mother with such an analytical mind? Listen to you. So the birth of a child is like death. But for us mere mortals, it's a normal, natural thing. Naturally, it is to plan the birth of children and protect yourself until a favorable moment comes. Do not think that once you are married, you should forget about everything and hurry up and give birth. Thank you for the lecture. Unfortunately, you heard it too late." "Kelly, I warned Sebastian the cat not to be impertinent. I'm a mother and I have every right to call my son whatever I like. I warned Kitty that he shouldn't marry a hillbilly. Do you have other priorities in this life? And I guess I'm a little vague on the subject of protection. But we'll fix that later. Right now we have a problem to solve." "I don't have a problem." "Kelly, you have to have an abortion. I'll arrange it at a good clinic. It'll be smooth, painless, no unpleasant consequences. You'll be in a private room with a nice menu and a TV. and then you'll be on the right course for recovery. Abortions, Kelly said. They do it before 12 weeks. I'm already at 14. I told you I'll make all the arrangements. But you have to stop exercising and start doing things for your family. After all, it's in your best interest. My mother-in-law had a distinctive, well-practiced voice. You could tell she lacked an audience, poor thing. You and I have different ideas about the good of the family. You confuse it with your own personal good. And you're not ashamed? No. This conversation was repeated with depressing frequency, that is, several times a day. The mother-in-law could be understood in front of her critic, hitherto considered an unpromising employee, finally loomed the possibility of promotion. And although this promotion was still written in pitchforks, Miranda was already celebrating her son's brilliant career. Villas, palaces with swimming pools, long trips to the most expensive resorts, and an endless string of the latest cars. Kelly's pregnancy brought down all her ambitious plans. Poor Kitty will now not be able to focus on his career. He will have to change the baby's diapers and run to the milk kitchen in the mornings. It's a nightmare. And now Miranda came to Kelly's house every day and, after waiting for her son to leave for work, started her record. In order not to arouse suspicion, the mother-in-law said that she wasn't feeling well and was more comfortable with Kelly around. You know my blood pressure. I'm dizzy. I'm afraid I'll fall at home and not be able to get up. And in transportation with dizziness are not afraid to ride? My daughter-in-law asked in surprise. I'm afraid. My mother-in-law pressed her lips, lowered her eyes and sighed long, so 100 us. But still there are people everywhere will help. At least an ambulance will call one, and even in an empty apartment. Well, nothing. The kitty will soon start earning good money. And then what then? What then? Then he'll buy a bigger apartment and take me in. With us. You mean Miranda, the larva of silent anguish immediately descended. I mean, the kitty and I talked about it a long time ago. And it's none of your business, Kelly. That's the pie. He and the kitty discussed something, decided something. And you, Kelly, have nothing to do with it, even though you're the kitty's legal wife. But this was followed by the usual reasoning that the most important thing now is not to interfere with the kitty in his dizzying career. And so Kelly is obliged to have an abortion. Sebastian refrained from commenting. He took the news that he would soon become a father surprisingly indifferently. He mumbled something like, "Yeah, I see," and went to his computer. When Kelly asked him to influence her mom, all she got in response was, "Oh, you guys figure it out on your own. What do I know about it? It's your lady business. What does that have to do with me?" Yes, it does. And he's just the father of the child. It's no big deal. Looking at her amorphous husband, Kelly wondered more and more if she had chosen the right man to be her husband. Once she had not doubted, but once it had seemed different. There was a girl. Kelly grew up in a sturdy country family. Her father was a good man. He did not spare himself to bring an extra penny to the house. Mom is beautiful and clever. Any business is in her hands. The younger brothers, the stubborn and lucky blue and white twins, argued. Mama Kelly remembered vaguely. There was a memory of an affectionate voice and a lullaby, the motive of which is no longer remembered. Later, looking at pictures of full blonde women, Kelly could not match the voice in the picture. So that separation never went anywhere. The voice and the songs separate, the woman in the picture separate. Mom had abandoned them all when Kelly had just turned 5. Daddy didn't like to talk about it, or maybe he overheard Grandma and Grandpa talking and managed to find out something. I think Dad came home from work late, like 10 or 11. The kids were asleep, Mom was gone, and there was a note on the table saying she's gone forever. Don't look for me. Live on your own. Raise your children. That's the whole story. Dad wasn't looking for anyone. Maybe he was too proud. Or maybe he just didn't care about his runaway wife. He had children to think about. The next day, Dad woke the kids up early, fed them breakfast, and took them to his parents. He talked to them, briefly asked them to take a closer look. And himself to work? As if not drunk, said the grandmother, looking after her son. What grief? What grief? Kelly asked. And it was as if the grandmother had come to her senses. 6 from here, go inside and help your grandmother bake pies. And Kelly went. And then somehow she moved in here with their brothers. And in general, the children now spent almost all their time here with their father's old men. But they lived well, nobody complained. Kevin set up the warmest room for the children, the one closest to the kitchen. The son made the younger cribs with carved backs and a table for drawing. And the grandmother sewed beautiful lampshades for the lamps and warm patchwork quilts. In winter, she would take the children's pillows out to the bench at home and leave them there for half the day and evenings. The babies would poke their daughters into the fresh, frost-scented softness. Nothing much seemed to have changed in her little life. Her mother had gone away, but her grandmother was always there, with her pies and stories. And Kevin with his jokes, with his skillful hands that turned any wood into works of art. And her father's dad, unlike her mom, Kelly remembered well. He had seemed so huge as a child, and his shoulders were grown like wings. He'd put Kelly on them and spin her around and she'd laugh. And she was happy and not a bit scared, because Grandma was the strongest person in the world, and he's the bravest and the smartest. On weekends, he always ran early in the morning to the village store, and the children, waking up, found in their beds their treasures of chocolates, delicious fruit lollipops, gingerbread, and cookies. Daddy always denied it and said that he had nothing to do with it and didn't know where this wealth came from. Grandmother would scold because the children would start eating sweets before breakfast. But who could stop them? And then they ran with their father to the forest for mushrooms or to the river. In winter, they built a slide and skied on it. Grandmother would prepare a hot dinner for their return, and pies would be ready in the oven. Then Daddy put everyone to bed and sat in the nursery for a long time, reading aloud the books Prostok Vashino, Neznaica on the Moon, The Wizard of Emerald City, and the Mummy Trolls. Daddy read great, as it should be, with pauses, in the right places, with intonation. Perhaps he could have been a great actor, but it hardly ever occurred to him. It was good for them to be cozy, warm, friendly, and fun. Kelly now defines it for herself with the word happy, and then her father died and he got hired to cut wood. Bigger, as always, he wanted to make money. Pine trees buried him. And Kelly couldn't believe her dad was gone. It was especially hard before the weekends. The week was a distraction, and they went to bed on Friday night. Kelly was used to being glad that tomorrow she would wake up and see her father. Then came the bitter thought that Daddy was gone. The candy still showed up on the blanket on Saturday mornings. Grandpa took care of that. He tried to replace their father as best he could, read to them, and took them to the river and to the woods. And Kelly, with the beginning of fall, suddenly began to think about the fact that it is getting colder, and Daddy must be cold to lie in the ground. One day she took a warm sweater out of the closet and took it to the grave. Her grandmother noticed, but she didn't scold her granddaughter, just held her close and kissed her on the top of her head. And at night Kelly dreamed for the first time about her father, who was cheerful, with the same sweater. I guess he was warm now. At 17, Kelly had her first love. By then, Grandma was buried in Kevin. Kelly, in her girlish modesty, carried her love, which was not difficult. Grandfather went to bed early, and Kelly tiptoed out of the house and ran to the wicket, behind which David was already waiting. How then everything was innocent, or was it tender? They walked almost till dawn, holding hands. They kissed for the first time only after a month. He picked wildflower bouquets for her. Kelly was too shy to take them home, so she left them in the field. Once she came home and, as usual, wanted to quietly go through the kitchen to her Kalinka. But the light was on in the kitchen. Grandfather was sitting in his favorite chair, serious, thoughtful, glasses on his nose, a book in his hands. Kelly froze on the threshold. Grandfather raised a calm gaze to his granddaughter. "Here," he said, showing her the cover. "Getting old, I guess, insomnia tortured. I decided to reread Pushkin." And Kelly's heart ached for some reason. Kevin didn't swear. He didn't steal it, though. What was there to swear about? She went through the kitchen, squatted down by the chair, put her head on her grandfather's lap. He stroked the top of her head, and her grandfather's hand was warm and dry. "I was young once too," he said. "For a whole year, every evening, I've been waiting under the window to see if she looked out." "Did she?" "No," grinned the grandfather. "I had to get up the courage to go and ask her to the club." "We had a club then. They brought a movie once a month. So I was shaking all month. She'd change her mind and go with someone else. But she didn't change her mind. No, I made myself a new dress with white polka dots on it." He was silent, and Kelly suddenly thought that this was true love. How many years has it been? And Grandpa remembered everything in detail, even Grandma's dress. "Okay, go to bed," Kevin said. "It's morning soon. You take your time, David." She didn't say anything about that night's conversation. But he must have figured it out, because a week later he proposed to Kelly. "I'll go to town, get you a dress and rings for both of us." That's what he said, and he was off to town. He never came back the same day. And the next day came the bad news. David had been in an accident, driving back on a rainy day, and it was slippery, and a truck flew into the oncoming lane. They said the motorcycle was thrown into the air as soon as he was alive. He stayed alive for now, but his spine was fractured, his arms broken, his legs broken. It was unknown if he would survive. Kelly came to the house in the evening. She wanted to ask the groom's mother about everything, but she came out of the house with a rolling pin in her hands. "Get out of here," she shouted, trying to get Kelly with her unsophisticated weapon. "It's because of you. It's because of you. That's it. You want to make Kelly feel good. And you're going to get out of here. Kindly go." The woman collapsed on the doorstep and burst into tears. And Kelly went home, ashamed for some reason, like she was really guilty of something. David's mother had hit her once on the arm, and now the spot was disgusting, and there was a bruise under the skin. Kelly went into town that morning. She wanted to see David, but the hospitals would not give her any information, whether David's mother had asked for it or something else. Kelly ran around town until 5 p.m. That's all, 5 p.m. That's all there is to it. She never found David, coming out of the last hospital where she was again given no information. Kelly slumped down on the bench with no energy. Her legs were aching from the long walk, and her head ached from the heat and nerves. Why was it so unbearably hot in the city? Kelly was used to the fact that in the village, even in the heat of the day, she could always find a cool spot on the veranda or go for a swim in the lake. And here even the benches, heated by the sun, so that sit scared, suddenly burned. Even from the roads the heat comes and gets mild. Kelly sat for a few minutes, staring stupidly at the bulletin board. The board was the most ordinary. Countless flyers, posters and announcements of some kind, collected and pasted many times. There were even love messages. And in the very center was a new poster, not too richly decorated, but new, as if straight from the printing press. Lectures on foreign literature at the intersection of the 19th and 20th centuries. Lecturer candidate of Philological Sciences and honored teacher of the Department of Foreign Literature, Miranda. Venue reading room of the library of the State University. Entrance is free. Wednesday, Friday, 1800. Library, white old building with huge windows, found out nearby, just across the street. The bus was about 3 hours away, and Kelly was glad to be able to listen to this lecture and get her mind off things. Otherwise, she'd go crazy. It was cool in the spacious hallway of the library for those few hours. For some reason, it was almost dark, but Kelly liked it there. After running around the hot city, it was even pleasant. She touched her palm to the wall. "Careful, girl, the mosaics are very old," one of the workers warned her. "It's over 100 years old. If everyone touches it with their hands." "Excuse me, I'm actually here for a lecture. Go up the stairs to the second floor. Get to the platform. In front of you there are 2 stairs. One leads up and the other down. Take the second staircase and go straight to the reading room. First up and then down." "Young lady, this is ancient architecture." I see. Thank you." The reading room was interesting. The amphitheater at the very bottom of it is a small patch, on which I pass a tall landwoman with a light blue suit. Oh, she's not hot. There were few people, and Kelly chose a seat in a corner of the hall, flush with the marble windowsill, which was cool. A young man lowered himself into a chair beside her, and Kelly turned away from him. He looked at her with too much interest, and she wanted to go back to her village, to be near her grandfather and brothers. She looked longingly at the round wall clock. It was a pity it would take so long to get to the bus. The announcer said a loud hello to everyone and began her story. Kelly tried her best to concentrate, but it wasn't working. Thoughts of the war kept running through her mind. What hospital would she look for him in, and how could she find out anything about him? What if he didn't survive, and how could she live without him? What to do? Suddenly, an open notebook slid across the table from somewhere to her side. The young man Kelly had already forgotten about looked at her expressively and moved a blue ballpoint pen toward her. "You like the lecture" was written on the open sheet. The handwriting was small and not very legible. "Are you a literary scholar?" "No," the answer to the king fell under the message. "I'm just here by chance." "I never would have guessed." There was an answer. "You listen so passionately. By the way, this lecture is given by my mother Miranda." "A very nice woman," Kelly wrote politely, although she didn't really think so at all. She, Miranda, didn't like it at all. She found it a bit like their rural geography class. Kelly was always wondering how they could teach a very interesting subject in such a boring way. But the geographical stubbornness believed that village children are not drawn to knowledge and in general can barely count to 10. So everything interesting was not for them, but they got to draw endless tables and work with cultural maps. It was the most boring thing in geography. The teacher considered herself a kind of fairy tale princess who was forced by an evil witch to sit in a dungeon and do dirty and hard work, felt sorry for herself, and looked contemptuously at the villagers. Here was Miranda mumbling something boringly into the microphone, and it was somehow immediately clear that she was also a fairy princess. She saw herself, well, at least in the Sorbonne, surrounded by enthusiastic admirers, but instead she was stuck here. And her listeners were clearly not into the lecture. Kelly could see it clearly from up in the front rows. Someone was whispering everything with someone else, but just like kids in class, and someone else was leafing through a book. And in the middle row, a middle-aged man was dozing off, leaning against the wall. "My name is Sebastian." Kelly, the neighbor, quickly wrote in his notebook. "What's your name?" "Kelly. You want to run away from here. I could show you the town. You're not from around here, I can tell." This intrusive attention was starting to annoy her. But the guy was very confident, and the city was his environment. Maybe there was something he could do to help her. "I have one more person in the hospital," she wrote. "Can you help me?" "I'll leave the hall now and wait for you in the corridor," he answered immediately. "Wait 10 minutes and come out too. We'll see what we can do." He got up and went out. When Kelly followed, she found Sebastian sitting on the windowsill. "I can finally hear your voice," he said, and waved his notebook in the air. "I'm getting tired of all this correspondence. I'm not really into the epistolary genre." "Your mom will probably be offended," Kelly said. "You left without listening to the lecture, didn't you?" "She won't notice," the boy sighed. "Mom is too self-absorbed during the lecture, like an actress on stage." "So who are you looking for?" "IA." Kelly hesitated. "I'm still such a relative." "No, that's my fiancé. He was in a car accident. Just yesterday he had a very bad wreck. I was told his condition is very serious. Hospitals don't recognize anything." Sebastian on the C forehead. "So write down your fiancé's first and last name and age. I'll see what I can find out. Wait for me here." "I will. I'm not going anywhere." "Thank you." Sebastian headed briskly for the stairs. Kelly, to pass the time, walked down the long hallway. It was 130 steps one way and 130 back, 260 steps. Waiting sometimes time is not measured in minutes, but in steps like this. Sebastian is back. At 262 steps, Kelly stopped and, without saying a word, looked him in the eye. "Not good," Kelly said. He shook his head. "Very, very bad." "Finish already," she shouted. He sighed. "I'm afraid your fiancé passed away today." Why would she believe that? Kelly didn't know why now, but at the time it hadn't occurred to her to wonder if the hospital had gotten the name wrong. She just believed him, a complete stranger. She returned to the village late, and her brothers told her what had happened. Her mother had gone to town, packed everything she needed, locked up the house, and said nothing to any of the neighbors about whether she was coming back or about David. Quietly packed up and left. The neighbors thought it was for good, and on the third day Sebastian appeared in the village. Kelly looked at him and waved her head. The memory of that library, the 260 steps of waiting, was too eerie. "And the news I'd come to check on you. Kelly wanted to make sure you were all right." "It was fine," she grinned. The grin came out bitter and heavy. Normal. This was where her memory hit her oddly. She'd invited Sebastian into the house to rest, to drink tea from the road. But she couldn't remember how she'd gotten ready for the table, what they'd talked about. She remembered seeing him off at the bus stop, and Sebastian squeezing her hands, and quickly, even slightly panting, saying that he understood everything, that she was in grief. but maybe later. Then I'll wait as long as it takes. Kelly, and I'm not going to rush you. But you can't spend your whole life in mourning, can you? Yes, I am, she said tiredly. She wished this conversation would end sooner. Thank you for everything. She found the bus home at dusk, smearing tears on her cheeks. She was ashamed before her grandfather and brothers, before herself and before the memory of David, as if she had not been a guest of the uninvited. She was having fun with a new beau, but the brothers as if they had not noticed anything. And the grandfather embraced Zaravo and his granddaughter and said only one thing: don't be ashamed. You didn't call him that. Sebastian turned out to be a persistent guy. He came to the village every Saturday as if to check up, to distract Kelly from the grief of a neighbor. But he was always looking for an excuse to stay until Sunday. He'd even pretend to enjoy fishing with the twins, or stayed to help his grandfather fix the fence or build a barn, though it was obvious that he didn't know anything about these things. He rode around like that for a year. Gradually, she got used to him. Sebastian and his presence became something ordinary to her, like her grandmother's embroidered pictures on the wall, the muttering of the radio, or the nightly songs of the crickets, whom she had called Sam since childhood. And then Sebastian proposed to Kelly, and she wouldn't refuse. Kevin, when he learned of the impending wedding, said nothing. He just looked at her closely. Tortured Kelly was confused by the look. I still have to go for someone, Grandpa, the kids. And how? I don't love anyone anyway. You wouldn't be in a hurry, would you? I didn't rush Grandpa. He's been coming to see me for a whole year. Grandpa nodded. I noticed that. But you didn't love him during that year. She should have listened to him, her wise grandfather. But what's to remember now? The wedding was modest. You could say it wasn't a wedding at all. Sebastian and Kelly quietly signed in the registry office and then went home, now to their home in Sebastian's bachelor apartment. That's how Kelly found herself a city dweller. Didn't want it, never aspired to the city. But fate. She didn't like city life very much. Everything here was alien, cold, indifferent. People always hurrying, running, cars rushing around. No one spoke to each other, and not everyone would apologize. Of course, the distances are huge here. That's why there's so much hustle and bustle. But you can just leave the house early and take a bus, for example. But the locals didn't seem to know anything about that. And worst of all were the huge stores. You can't keep your eyes open for groceries, but the lines are long, and the cashiers count everything lightning fast. You don't have time to understand anything, you just know we're paying. But it's okay. And to this Kelly had undergone Sebastian. She tried hard to be a good wife, understanding and economic. She especially needed understanding. Sebastian was not one to strive for any accomplishments. He worked for many years as an ordinary employee of the accounting department and lived in a one-room Khrushchevka, which his mother gave him on his coming of age. It hadn't been renovated in a long time. Once he glued some simple, cheapest wallpaper. So he lived with them, though they were already falling off the walls in some places. In the kitchen, I was saving a faucet. But Sebastian didn't care about that either. At home, anyway, he mostly sat at his computer with headphones on. He had enough of a roof over his head, of walls, and he wasn't used to fuss. There are coffee shops for comfort, and his home to sleep in, to wash, to change clothes. In the same apartment he brought his young wife and Kelly. All their lives lived in a spacious village house. At first it felt like the walls were about to close in and crush her. But Sebastian didn't see it that way. He was one of those rare lucky people who were happy with everything in life. The salary is small, of course, he said, but I have the same working hours as everyone else. 2 days off, holidays, vacation as it should be. Why go up? To enter the working days and spend the night. And there's so much responsibility, it's scary to think about. No, I'm fine with all that. And the apartment? Kelly asked her husband. I mean, we're gonna have kids. We're gonna need a bigger place. Even with one kid, our one bedroom is too cramped. When we have children, then we'll think about it, Sebastian replied nonchalantly. And then, but you think about it. The apartment is small. That's true, that's true. But the communal rent is penniless. We just live within our means. You're not robbing money from your daycare center either. When Grandpa Kevin died quietly in his sleep, the brothers gave up their shares in the inheritance in favor of Kelly. The twins were now grown, Both worked in their home up north and made very good money. Sebastian had insisted on selling their grandfather's house, but Kelly would not do it. "I grew up there," she explained to her husband. "My whole childhood was there, and every pebble reminds me of my childhood, as I will sell my childhood. But you live in the city, and then you will long forget the talk that we need a bigger apartment. With a little effort, this house will fetch a good price. We could add the money from the sale of the house to the price of this apartment and then—" "No, Sebastian. This house is very dear to me, and I won't sell it for any money." "Never. After all, we can use this house as a summer house. How far would it be to drive there?" Sebastian wrinkled his nose. "When you used to go there to see me every weekend," his wife reminded him. He smiled and took her face in the palm of his hand. "I'd go to the end of the world to see you," he said affectionately. "But to go to the countryside just to water the cucumbers? No, I'm sorry." Kelly thought of it all as petty family squabbles, not worth much attention. Everything changed when Kelly told her husband she was pregnant. The very next day, her mother-in-law showed up and, after waiting for her son to leave for work, began a serious womanly conversation. "I never understood why the kitty chose you. For that matter, I don't understand many of my son's choices." The expression on Miranda's face was dismissive and cold. Kelly pretended to, and she doesn't notice it. "You have no education, no special beauty, no background. How can I compare to you?" Kelly couldn't help herself. "You noticed that, didn't you?" The mother-in-law answered calmly. "Sebastian's father was a very talented engineer. I myself, have been practicing philology all my life. Honestly, I don't know why Sebastian chose accounting, and I didn't get involved. I thought I could have a good career there, too. But it seems that my son has no ambition whatsoever. Unfortunately, he married you, although I would have preferred that he chose another woman with achievements, with ambition, the kind that would have pushed Sebastian forward. Next to such a wife, he would strive to live up to it. So Miranda." Kelly rose resolutely from her seat. "I'm getting tired of all this talk. Let's get down to business. What's your point? You know there's a vacancy in the accounting department for a head accountant. Let's say it's a real chance for my son to run for it. That's great. I'd be thrilled. The problem is you're pregnant. If Sebastian does get promoted, the sleep deprivation from the baby's cries and other worries will keep him from concentrating. So it would be better if you, having gotten rid of the baby," that for a moment Kelly thought she could hear it. She wished she had. But the mother-in-law repeated confidently and quickly, leaning over to her daughter-in-law to be sure, "Get rid of the baby. No one wants it. You do now. You said get rid exactly. I'll get you into a good clinic, pay for everything. You won't have to worry about a thing. Just do as I say and everything will be fine. Sebastian will become chief accountant. He'll start earning good money. He can finally have a career and get pregnant again, but later. Right now your pregnancy is just inappropriate." "Are you actually talking about your own grandson?" Kelly mumbled, confused. "You have no heart at all, but you have a sense of what's timely and what's not." Miranda rummaged in her purse and pulled out a long, thin cigarette. She didn't smoke, though. As she fanned it with her fingers, Kelly couldn't take her eyes off her manicure. Her mother-in-law had long, predatorily sharpened nails. They were painted beautifully with white hems and rosettes, but they still made an unpleasant impression. Claws sharp, bent, as if predatory. Birds seemed to want to pounce and tear them apart. "You see, Kelly," the mother-in-law said thoughtfully, "you're a country girl. You have your traditional values there, family, kin, family, more children. That may be fine, but it's different for that rural environment in the cities, especially the big cities." "Career?" Kelly clarified. "Not only that. How do you explain it? A different kind of woman is more valued here, and maybe it would be better for you to marry. Well, you're equal. Well, you know what you're implying? What are you talking about now?" "Yeah, the networks weren't singing." My mother-in-law interrupted. "All I'm saying is that with your pregnancy, you're adding to all the trouble, with a divorce on the horizon. And with a small child in your arms, and even without a husband, well, what will you do? Where are you going to go? You'll have to go somewhere with a baby. We'll have to. You think Sebastian's going to put up with all this? Baby squeals? Diapers? Ah, sorry, the diapers. The never-tired wife who's not up to it. You don't know what it's like. I do. Miranda's thin face distorted for a moment, as if through the long, cold mask suddenly began the face of an ordinary earthly woman who happened to love and suffer love. Kelly, listen to me. I loved my father's bones, he loved me, and we could probably have lived happily. We lived happily ever after, but I got pregnant just like you, which is to say at the wrong time. My husband told me about it, but I wouldn't listen. I was well into my 30s. That was considered critical in those days. A woman's age, had a baby. So, my husband was blown away and my son grew up without a father. But you still have a son, Kelly noted. I might not have. And what guarantee is there that your husband would have stayed with you? There are no guarantees, sighed the mother-in-law. But there are others. For example, that an untimely pregnancy can ruin everything. Miranda left her son's apartment and sat down on a bench outside the house. They're so stubborn, aren't they? That Kelly girl had made her angry before she got pregnant. But in what way? It was hard to answer that question even for herself. Kelly was kind of okay. Although they came from the backwoods of the village, but with the right speech, well-read and pleasant, and quite industrious in the household. She always has time for everything. Her house is clean, linen, gradually put breakfast, lunch and dinner are there, and everything fresh. On her neck, she didn't try to sit with her husband either. She found a job right away. Sebastian seems happy with her. But Miranda can't even look at that girl. It's disgusting. Certainly not the kind of wife she wanted for her son. There was a conviction inherent in many mothers that her son is worthy of only the best one, who has the appearance at least now on the cover of the magazine and brilliant education and aristocratic origin and a dizzying career and a salary so that her husband did not ask for a penny and still save money. But at the same time, the girl should be modest, not bent on housework, excellent cook, and keep the house in perfect cleanliness. And it is better that the girl had her own spacious apartment. Then Sebastian one room can be rented, and the money will be more. Such a wife and herself in life well settled, and even help her husband. And children? Well, let there be children only. Let Sebastian and less burdened. Children are the mother's care. Let the mother look after them and take care of them herself. And although Miranda's mind perfectly understood that such girls, if they exist in nature, are very rare, still, she dreamed of such a daughter-in-law. An earthy and ordinary Kelly annoyed her, just because she was earthy and ordinary. Pregnancy gave a vector of dislike. Before Sebastian, finally, prospects open up. He will be able to prove himself, to become a wealthy man, to acquire a new environment. Yes, he himself in 6 months after this would get rid of his wire, as he would look at other girls bright, well-groomed, ambitious, so would immediately realize who he took as a wife. But Kelly, as you can see, is cunning peasant, just folk cunning to get pregnant. And the transplanted man isn't going anywhere. Well, here's a present for you. She's 14 weeks pregnant, you know. Jesus, what do you do when Miranda grabs her cell phone out of her purse and dials her longtime friend? The phone listed her as Lisa the artist. That was true, by the way. Lisa was an artist. Only her paintings were peculiar. Not everyone's Lisa paintings were just colorful splotches on a canvas. Miranda didn't understand them, and the artist just laughed. That's the trick, Miranda. Everyone sees something different. I don't see anything. Miranda was indignant. I think it's just one of those you molded the colors, ruined the canvas, and call this nightmare painting. In fact, she wasn't the only one who felt that way. These paintings sold poorly, and Lisa often, just to avoid starvation, was employed as an artist decorator in a kindergarten or makeup artist in the theater. That's where the theater started. A couple of years ago, Lisa was hosting a visiting starlet and told her about her life. The actress turned out to be a lady who sympathized with the poor painter. "And you show me your paintings," she suggested. "I like unusual ones, and if I like something, I will buy it without bargaining." Then Miranda was sure that just out of pity. The actress bought 2 Lisa movie pictures and a week later called and offered to arrange an exhibition. It turned out that the actress's friends simply fell in love with the mysterious painting of an unknown aunt. And now everyone wanted to meet her. So Lisa became a terribly fashionable artist. Money flowed into her pockets, and Lisa had a huge apartment with designer renovation, some super expensive clothes and exotic menu for every day. She continued to be friends with Miranda, but more unilaterally. Once upon a time, they were just 2 very young and poor girls. They lived in the same dorm room, happy when they could get food for soup. And now Miranda was secretly jealous of her rapidly getting rich friend. She sincerely thought that Lisa was an ordinary mediocrity who was just lucky. The only question was, why was she so lucky? But Lisa did not ask herself such questions. She just rejoiced at her success and generously gifted her friends, acquaintances, relatives, lovers. And she didn't think about putting something away for a rainy day. Life is totally unpredictable, she explained. 2 years ago I was poor, naked, and now I've forgotten how to count money. But who would have guessed that? The only way to live is to live in the moment. Miranda just presses her lips together. She would love to stop socializing with this crazy bohemian. But right now the artist could be of great use to her. Lisa, my darling, she sang out as soon as her friend picked up the phone. I really, really need your help. Maybe Miranda meant well, wanted to keep her family together, her kitty. Today Kelly remembered those conversations in great detail, even that first one, after which there had been many others just as unpleasant. But today she suddenly thought that maybe Miranda, in her own way, had wished her well. As best she could, warned her, hinted at her. She should have listened, and now she was looking at a text from her husband. I'm sorry, I've fallen in love with another woman. Now I won't be home with her for another week. You'll have time to pack up and leave for the country. Leave the keys in the mailbox. Don't file for alimony. I'll pay as much as I can. Goodbye. She reread the message one more time, and yet it wasn't just a dream. He really wrote it himself. On the soul was from the rear and cold, as everything turns out. Maybe just bored, tired. He met another, wrote an email to his wife, and everything died out of his life, some garbage crumpled and neatly so in the trash can. Goodbye-bye, nothing happened. And what was? It doesn't matter. Quick, sterile. PMS saves time and nerves. Kelly put aside her phone and visualized the mezzanine. There had to still be her suitcase lying around somewhere. She hadn't thrown it away, hadn't she? Inside were a few photos, family snapshots, a couple from prom. Nothing special. Memories that only she holds dear. I don't think she's ever even shown them to her husband. What's so interesting? Semyon's already seen it, and school pictures are all the same. But how desperately she wanted to go back to the time when her father and grandparents were alive. Yes, it really is time to go home. But where to? Brothers in the north. Kevin's gone. It's home. Home, sure, but God, how do you go back to that empty nest? Grandfather, grandmother, and father are all in the cemetery. I can't even think about my mom. Oh, doesn't she have a home anymore? I have to start all over again to build a home. It's so hard, and she is just an abandoned homeless, pregnant woman, and no one around, no one and nothing, only a house empty. Don't whine. You'll lose the baby, Kelly sternly commanded herself. A house is a house. Got it. That's what I'm saving. We'll make it nice, and we'll have a normal life. She had very little stuff. That's odd. Kelly thought she'd had more in 5 years, but half the suitcase was empty, and it looked kind of cheesy or something. But yeah, it did. She bought a lot, but not for herself, but for the house, linens, curtains. And now she doesn't want to take them with her. Let Sebastian know, let the kitty and her mommy choke on it. It's disgusting. It's still disgusting. It's your green fish. You mean it's your family? Ugh. Kelly slammed the suitcase shut irritably. Her past life was over forever. Sebastian returned home and called out to his wife, but Mom looked out of the kitchen. Hello, kitty cat. Are you hungry? How's Lisa? Oh, Mom won't forgive me for going to see my girlfriends anymore. She sent me to the store. When I got back, she remembered I had to go to the drugstore. But you didn't say no. I hope so. How could I say no? I used to carry half that drugstore for her. She asked me to take out the trash. Hey, where'd she get all that garbage? You don't know? Come on, son. A man broke his leg and it's hard on her, and you're getting lost. They were nagging. And I'm not going to see her again. Kelly? Where's Kelly? I don't know. I met her on my way here. But she didn't say hello to me, just handed me her keys, and that was it. And then she walked on with her suitcase. With what? Sebastian slumped down on a rickety throwaway combat kitchen stool. Mom, wait, I don't understand. Where did she go with the suitcase and why not? And her stuff's still there. Miranda waved her hands. I don't know. Sebastian didn't check. He jumped up and rushed into the room, swearing, looking in the closet. Miranda allowed herself a satisfied smile. Good girl. Lisa had worked clean, competently corralling the boy with errands and tiring him out. And when he once again left her apartment, forgot his phone, sent Kelly a message, "Good job. You should have gotten your girlfriend a nice gift for us." Sebastian's voice came from the room. I think. My wife has left me. He came back into the kitchen. His face was confused, so sad that Miranda felt sorry for him. But nothing. He's worried now, and then he'll come to his senses, get a promotion, and then he'll go to work. That's the best remedy for disappointment. And then what? Then he'll get angry, make a career, become a rich man. If she left, she said aloud to her mom, maybe it was for the best. Sebastian raised his head. What? Why for the best? What are you talking about now, Mom? What do you mean, what? Think about it. Is she a match for you? She's a country girl. No glamour, no manners, no good education. Don't get me wrong, son. She may have read some books, but that's not enough. It's still the night cuckoo smoking the daytime cuckoo. 5 years from now, you'll realize you're not interested in her. Nothing to talk about, you know? And already the child is growing up, and the years lived together too cannot be crossed out. Not out. It's a good thing she left on her own. Kotik, he shrugged. I had a good time with her. Good for now. It's also good to live with a cat, with a dog. It's good to live in a cozy apartment, eat good food. Kelly, for you, a wife is a comfort element, like a cat. But you can't build a normal family with a cat. She's not your equal. Sebastian didn't listen to her. He sat staring in front of him. He looked lost and empty. The road to his home village had obviously not been repaired for a long time. It wasn't necessary. They let the villages go. They let the buses run less and less. And who were they to transport? People tend to go to the city. There's work, wages, and life in general. But in the villages, clubs, stores, and cafes are closing down. But there are no roads and a lot of hard labor, for which no one will thank you. So the villages are dying out little by little. It's horrible. Vaughn, already how many abandoned houses are standing on the floor, collapsed terrible, from behind boarded-up windows blind. Driving past the villages, Kelly hoped that things were better in her native village. True, she didn't have the cheapest funeral there. But at her stop, she had to get off straight downtown. Huge puddles. It's a big puddle. You could swim across it. You can breaststroke, you can crawl. Kelly just waded in, swam through the water, and somehow made it to shore, dragging her suitcase behind her. Her lightweight city sneakers were instantly soaked and ready to fall apart right here and now. The soles of the confirming ones fell off. Good thing it was at least a 10-minute walk home. They wouldn't fall apart, I guess. The rooms were cold, of course, you bet. Who pushed them in? Nobody. But it's a fixable problem. And very, very empty. It was like silence itself. Lurking, waiting to see what the landlady would do. Kelly stopped in the middle of the kitchen, looked around bewildered. For some reason it seemed to her, to the last, it seemed to Xenia, that she would enter that house, the house of her childhood, that it would be warm and the unwashed floors would smell of wood shavings, and a vase of apples on the table. That grandmother's embroidery on the walls and grandfather's armchairs here, closer to the stove. But the embroideries and the chairs and all the furniture and kitchen utensils were in the attic, and all the furnishings too. There are only bare walls here, and there's a gorgeous cobweb under the ceiling, hanging in shreds. It's so creepy. And that was the scariest part. Not the cobwebs, of course, but the emptiness. This is the beginning of a new life from scratch. From nothing, from nothing. Kelly sat on the floor and cried bitterly, stroking the cold floor, as if asking forgiveness for betrayal, for abandonment. Here, everything and everything that is native, understandable, beloved, and went to hell knows where in the city. And what for? Did she find happiness there? She was thrown out. She came back like a dog, beaten, and at home she waited for her all this time and took her back. Gently accepted the poem with joy. She sat like that for 10 minutes or an hour. Thoughts were clumsy, cumbersome, heavy in her head. She wouldn't go back to her husband, even if he changed his mind and called her back. And then, too, That realization came clear and transparent now. How do we get that glass? She wasn't too fond of the whole city life thing, or her married ones. Sebastian Kitty was like a pretty good husband. Not a punchy character, which with a mom like that, it's not surprising, but he's quiet, not prone. Always happy with everything. Kelly thought for a long time that this would be enough for marital happiness. Wrong. It turns out, Sebastian did his own thing, went to work, played on the computer in his spare time. And Kelly just lived nearby, worked too, just in her spare time. Shopping, cooking, cleaning. So it turns out she had an easier life as a girl. Brothers and grandfather always tried to help, and her efforts did not leave unnoticed. But is this the road not taken? We'd have to get settled in here somehow. Kelly walked around the room, mentally figuring out how to arrange the furniture and what she would need to buy. The baby would need a crib. We could set up a bedroom in the former nursery. The room is warm and the view from the window is wonderful. Endless fields, all in daisies and cornflowers. I wanted to do something right now, even dusting. I could use it. It was like she'd taken the first step towards her new existence, towards a new life. She shouldn't have left with one half-empty suitcase. I wish I could start cleaning right now. It wouldn't be so dreary. Household chores are distracting. But no rags, no broom. It's a pity there are no neighbors around. Almost. So would have come to visit, showed herself to the neighbors, they would at least give her tea and talk to her. No way. I bled my heart 10 times on the way here. How empty the once crowded village has become. How many houses have been abandoned. Empty vegetable gardens, overgrown with nettles. It's already dried up to a man's height and there's no one to mow it. And it's scary to live alone in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if anyone will come here. I'll get a dog, Kelly said out loud, a big wolfhound of 2. And at the same moment she was startled by a knock at the door. Little who gets in, she thought a moment ago. Who knows who got in? She didn't move. There's no one here. The middle of nowhere, the middle of nowhere. Who could knock? She imagined it was the wind, the wind. The knock was repeated. No, not the wind. Then what is it? Maybe a convict. Weren't there any prisons around here? But there are prisons in the city, and they must be on the run. So he's on the run. But where to run to? You can't hide in the city, they'll catch you in a heartbeat. So only in the middle of nowhere. Or a homeless guy. But why would a homeless guy knock on people's doors when there's a lot of abandoned buildings out there? Pick anyone. No pity. Except for food. Should I ask for food or rob them? Open up, mistress, came the young voice of Kelly from behind the door. Don't hide yours, Kelly. He said Kelly, so it must be someone he knows. Oh, but thank God there's someone here. She quickly crossed the kitchen, passed the short hallway and opened the door. Hello. Oh, there was her dead fiancé sitting in a wheelchair on the doorstep. The same straw shaggy freckles on his nose. Sashenka lurking in his bright eyes. David, it's you. I'm Kelly. He smiled when he saw you through the window. I couldn't believe it. At first I thought I was dreaming, but then I blinked and realized I wasn't dreaming about you. I saw you walking alone with a suitcase. I thought maybe I could help you with something. David, they told me, they told me. Oh, shame. Since she was even in agony, blood came to her cheeks. I thought you were dead. I was looking for you and I found out. I know, he said, and his face built as if a gray shadow had fallen over him. I know everything. Kelly, it's not your fault, and you have nothing to be ashamed of, mother. She found out you went to look for me, but she told everyone to say I was dead. Why would she do that? Whoever asked about me, she told them to say that. I don't know how she persuaded me. I guess she gave me money. And she decided to go to the city quickly. She didn't even give her neighbors her address. She had an apartment in town. That still leaves customs. Oh, David, yes, sure, let me help you. No need. I can handle my own chair. He handled it with dexterity. It must have been habit. But why? David, Kelly asked, following him. Why did your mom do that? What did I ever do to her? Well, he said over his shoulder. She, decided that everything, because you kind of bring bad luck, that your mother left you and the kids. Then the father died, the grandmother died. And she thought it was all your fault. Who am I? That's nonsense, of course. David said it conciliatory. Well, my mom was a loyal woman, believed in all this. Believed in what? What did she believe in, David? Well, my mother, I don't know why she left us. Dad died in the woods. You know he'd do any job to make sure we had everything he wanted. And my grandmother, she was already old. Your mother believed she blamed me. But as in what? In turnabout and reversals, in spoilage, in frog spawn, in this Friday's salt, or Thursday's new salt. Yes, Thursday's new salt, black cats. So she thought you'd jinxed me or something. She thought I should stay away from you. I didn't know anything. It took me 3 or 4 weeks to fully recover from my nickname. When I came to my senses, my mother told me that you were in love with a townie. I could not come to my senses for a year. Kelly was outraged. What love? I know that later. David interrupted her. I know everything, Kelly. I found my mother's letter. But she didn't recognize the internet. It was all handwritten. I don't know why. I guess I wrote something, forgot to send it, but I read it to her. I'm ashamed, but it's just the way it is. I read it, and that's how I found out. It's not good. It wasn't my mom's doing. But as they say, it's all good or nothing but the truth. Kelly finished the sentence. Why did your mom die a year ago? David answered. She went to her family in her homeland, but they met her there, of course, with a table and drinks. And at night, they suddenly decided to go boating and drowned. Anyway, I don't hold a grudge against my mother. She was a simple woman. She did what she could to make me feel good. But she did. I'm so sorry, David. I'm so sorry. I don't know. And you? How could you be alone? It's a shame, he agreed. I decided then that I'd go back to my roots. This is my land, I'm from here. It's, good for me. It's better in the country than in the city. There's a lot of work here, but I'm my own boss. And besides, everything here is dear to me. I've lived in the city for 4 years, and I still get lost without a navigator. And here, never. You'll never find your way out of any thicket in the woods. How do you go into the woods? Kelly asked. You do. How about this? David laughed. Shit, Kelly, I forgot. Look at this. And he got up from his chair and strolled lightly through the kitchen. You see, I'm not fully recovered yet. Sometimes I get tired during the day. Then I sit down in this chair. Otherwise, it's okay, I walk. My record is 5 kilometers in a day. But Kelly, in a year, I'm going to be a big boy. And you know what's amazing? I couldn't get up in the city. I'd take a dozen steps and then I'd get tired. But once I got here, I got stronger. So you can't believe that your native land gives you strength. How about you? Kelly sighs. Now it was her turn to talk. What could she tell? That she married an amoeba with no goals, no aspirations, that her mother-in-law nagged her to have an abortion, that the amoebias pointed her out the door. Oh, it's so hard to talk about. But I didn't keep anything bad or wrong from her. I left my husband because he asked me to. He's with someone else, and I'm pregnant with his child, so I'm going to start a new life. I just don't know how. David shook his head, winked. Well, I'd start with some hot tea and a meal for you. You've come a long way, and I don't see any Stella or kettle here. Hadn't thought to buy anything yet, Kelly admitted. Didn't go to the store. Now I'm running before closing time. Because there's still time, I'll make it. And there's no time, there's no time. The store's not open today. That's right. It's 4 yards long. What's there to do on weekends? So they close for 3 days a week, 3 days a week. But a day to get the goods, to bring them back, to put them on display. But also 2 days to rest. So you can't get to the store before Tuesday. The locals already know that and they shop ahead of time. But Kelly shook her head, dejected. She didn't want to admit it to the bank, but she felt like a total failure. She started her new life as a fool. No groceries, no soap, no shampoo. But she had to act so idiotic. She could have taken everything she needed from home. She bought it with her own money. But no, she was proud. Let them choke on it. At least Sebastian's cat will eat and wash now, and she'll sit there dirty and hungry. That's all her pride. But then I started. She's been killed in the war. Nonsense. Let's do this. Let's go to my place now. You eat and pass it around. and tomorrow we'll declutter your house together. Is there anything in the attic? Any furniture? A bed at least? It's all there afterwards. But after we buried Grandpa, but I haven't gone up there in the dark yet. I'm scared. Tomorrow we'll go together. David decided. And now, taking out of the suitcase what you need, and let's go. Kelly laughed. I'm embarrassed. He grinned. Oh, come on, we're not strangers after all, and tomorrow we'll be all sorted out. In the light of day, I'll climb into the attic, see what else you need, and we'll go to town together. No, 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 she protested. You're just getting on your feet. Where do you have to go to town? I'll go myself, I have a car, so it's not a problem, David reassured her. We'll be comfortable. It's not like being on a bus at 0200 hours. And don't worry about the money. Are you a millionaire now? She grinned. You talk about money, don't worry. Almost a millionaire by village standards, of course. The store here doesn't work very often, but the internet is fine. I've been working remotely in the city, and now I don't have much to spend here either. So I save a lot. It's a good place to save. What are we going to do? Get your stuff. Better give me your suitcase. Let's go. Kelly silently followed David. Yeah, it's a miracle, isn't it? One man just threw her out of his life, and the other came in and fixed it in no time at all. I could have held a grudge, though, but I didn't. You know, said David, propping up the door of his house. I really wanted to find you afterward. When I got home, I don't even know why, whether to talk to you or to say goodbye. I knew I was a cripple, and now there's no wedding, and I thought you were with someone else. Now I realize I just wanted to see you. I missed you a lot. And you? I smiled sadly. Kelly thought you were dead. I couldn't believe it at first, but then I accepted it. I didn't love you. No, I just accepted it. I had to get on with my life, but I did. Sebastian is my husband, my father-in-law, my ex-husband. He's been coming here every weekend for a year, like a job. I got used to him. I got married the same way because I got used to him. No love, but no disgust. It was like living in a dream with him, you know? Miranda was holding a big bag. It was rustling intriguingly with countless ornate boxes, ribbons, wrappings. It's good to thank a friend for a good deed. Miranda, come on out. This is Lisa for you, said Miranda. Unload everything on the table. There's a whole bunch of goodies, chic and wine. I got it, your favorite. Oh, thank you. We finally got rid of that beautiful paisanki. From who? Kelly, of course. She didn't realize we were playing a trick on her, so she packed her bags. Can you believe she did that? Stop it. The artist interrupted. You said it was a prank. Yes, that Kelly herself asked to organize it, so that she would have an excuse to scandalize Sebastian and then make up. And it was Miranda who nodded. You know how Sebastian is. I'm a little seal. Kelly wanted to shake him up, so she asked me for advice, and I asked for it. And then all of a sudden Miranda left. Don't be ridiculous. Miranda covered her eyes for a second and took a deep breath. Okay, this was totally my idea. I wanted that girl to get the hell out of my village. We don't need it. That's how you don't need it. Did Sebastian decide that, or did you? Miranda slumped in her chair. Lisa, what do you want from me? Well, I decided it. It makes you feel better. She got pregnant on purpose to tie Sebastian to her. Don't you understand that? And I, his mother, should have let it happen. Stand by and watch in silence, and use me as a weapon. Pretending and lying is better? The ends justify the means? Not always. You just walked into other people's lives. Miranda, you didn't. I found my son's life, of course, Lisa smiled, by arranging his divorce, jumping a pregnant woman, and using me to do it. Wonderful job you did, Miranda. Congratulations on such a grand success. Miranda was silent. She was angry with her friend. Lisa was a fool. She didn't know such problems. And how could she have her only daughter? Kathy grew up, became a graphic designer, and married someone like herself. They bought a house somewhere in the suburbs of Moscow, and they're self-employed. Miranda was there once with Lisa. The guys had a nice house with 2 floors, a nice attic and a terrace all carved in carved covenants. And the ground was full of weeds. Dandelions, some other little flowers. Why don't you take care of the soil? Miranda asked. You can do everything here. Make a good vegetable garden. Kathy and her husband smiled dreamily as they looked at their overgrown plot. And we like the weeds. It feels like living in the middle of a clear field. Miranda twitched at their silliness as well, but one fact was impossible to dispute. Even though these two were, from her point of view, complete idiots, they had found each other. Lisa, she daughter, married to Rovno. Kathy and her husband were understandable and pleasant to each other. They thought alike. They had the same tastes and habits. They watched the same movies and listened to the same music. Finally, they spoke the same language, and even their pasts were in a sense common. They lived in the same town, walked the same streets, had a kindergarten, a school, common acquaintances. It was not the same as Sebastian Kelly, when one was getting beds and the other was spending summer vacations by the sea. "You've never had that in your life, Lisa," she said at last. "You wouldn't understand it. They come from very different backgrounds. Kitty, and this is his Kelly. It's very important. They just don't and can't have anything in common except, well, you know what? But when the hormones get out of whack, it'll happen sooner or later. What's left? She's gonna drag Sebastian down. He'll be stuck in that bookkeeping job of his, with nothing to show for it. Dora doesn't want anything but to breed. I talked to her, Lisa. I offered to pay for an abortion at the best clinic. I even had to lie to her that Sebastian's dad left me because I didn't give birth on time." That's how Lisa chuckled. "So the poor girl doesn't know that you're the one who came to the city from the country. You married a city dweller and then ran away from him so that he wouldn't guess that you had a child from your lover." "Stop it." Miranda was indignant. "You've got a lot to remember. It was just a youthful mistake. I fell in love. And then I got a city registration in passing so I could pretend to be something I'm not. You made up your own biography, Miranda. You're a 134th generation townie aristocrat. I don't even know who that is. But you're a country girl who married for your residency. And you never had any sudden crushes. Did you make love to John? And she got married in her second year, without stopping spinning. But Vasca was from a neighboring village. You had to go to the city. What's wrong?" "I knew I had to make my own way in life," shouted Miranda. "By myself, without any help. How was I supposed to survive? Stuck in a stinking dorm with cockroaches and bedbugs. Remember, Lisa, how we lived back then. Always hungry, scantily clad. What could our parents do to send us a sack of potatoes? But that's how we all lived. I didn't want to live like everyone else. I wanted to live in a normal apartment, dress well, eat enough 3 times a day, and plow in some cold hut. I didn't want to go to that cockroach place where I'd be driven by distribution." "Vasca who?" "He was a loader. He worked part-time and still sent home half of his salary because the house was again brothers and sisters. And I loved him, Lisa. And I never loved him like that again. But where would I be if I'd stayed with him?" Lisa shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know, but I don't rule out the possibility that you would be with the man you loved, with whom you had lived half your life in harmony and love. And maybe you wouldn't be as angry as you are now." "I would resist," said Miranda. "I would be very unhappy, poor, and with a bunch of children sitting in the village and not seeing the light of day. Without education, without work, without prospects, I would pull my burden and think that the main thing is to keep on pulling, like a burlak on the Volga." She stopped talking. Her friend didn't object either. She couldn't change her mind. Miranda was always so stubborn, and perhaps it's forever. "How is Sebastian?" Lisa asked. "Not too upset, I hope." Miranda waved her hand. "Of course he is. Well, that's normal. He'll be sad for a while. Then he calms down and forgets. There are plenty of smarter girls around, more beautiful than this Kelly. What's the difference? A daughter is not a name, it's a level of development. Don't start over, Miranda, he'll calm down. He'll calm down, he'll find another girl and forget all about it." Sebastian had already forgotten how long it takes to get to the machine village. You drive and you can't see the end of the road. I can't believe he came here 5 years ago. Either he was younger or the road was shorter. But he did, every week. He had a purpose then, to see ours. He didn't have a purpose now, but for some reason he was on that bus. Why? He didn't know why he was going, did he? Probably not to get his wife back. She left on her own. So there's nothing to get back. Why not fire the man? But at least I wanted to know why she'd suddenly jumped out of her seat. Maybe he'd done something to her. The bus was peaceful. The patriarchs on the bumps and the passengers were talking softly among themselves about something. Someone was telling a story without beginning and end. Someone was whispering the news to his neighbor Sebastian, leaned his forehead against the glass and imperceptibly dozed off. The monotony of the road, children's voices the best lullaby. He always liked to fall asleep like that, to someone's muffled voices. Kelly woke up very early. David settled himself on the couch and gave her the bed. The bed, by the way, was a simple king bed, with a carved back, with a wide canopy, so that 4 people could fit on it without disturbing each other. And in general, David was very cozy. I guess when he moved here, he decided to remodel the whole house to his liking. And it turned out great. Kelly especially liked the kitchen. All the furniture is wooden, broken, with vintage white Yankee garlic vases hanging in the corner. Also orange are onions and bright red thin lines of hot peppers. The table is what? Dark, brown, warm. I'm tempted to scatter flour over it. Knead the dough. And it is even strange that in such a cozy house there was still no woman. "Do you like it at my place?" shouted David from the room. "Very much," answered Kelly. "Now I want my own place just as nice. Let's do it. Let's get something to eat and come back to your place. We'll see what's in the attic." And there was almost everything in the attic. Kelly shrieked with joy, rushed over to the old David team. Look, her dad and grandpa made it. See, she pulled out the top drawer. They even signed right here. Just for fun. Daddy, Grandpa. Kelly put her palm over the 2 signatures as if she were hugging them. And right there, she ran over to a huge party cabinet. Grandma's favorite mirror. You know how she used to joke? She used to say, "When I look in that mirror, I'm beautiful." And you won't believe it. Every morning when she gets out of bed, she looks in the mirror. She looks at it for a minute, and then she gets down to business. And before she went to bed, she always let her hair down in front of that mirror. What was her hair like, David? Long, down to her waist. I remember David smiled. She sometimes came to my mother and asked her to cut her hair 5 or even 10 centimeters. She said her hair was heavy. And here's my childhood bed. What do you mean, a child's bed? My grandfather would have dressed it for me when I grew up, so it's fine now. You know, Kelly stroked the headboard. I felt so awful last night when I walked into the house, and it was so empty and hollow. I roared so much. I wanted to go home so badly. Told David. Yeah, that's right. Now I see it's all here. I should have just come up here. I can already picture myself putting up my grandmother's curtains. Here they are in a drawer with tape. How the baby's gonna grow up in this house. And if your husband comes for you? David asked softly. He will come and say that he has understood and realized everything. He wants to start all over again. Kelly even laughed at this strange idea. There was no beginning, David. There was nothing. How so? He wondered. So I got married because I had to. I thought I had to. That's ridiculous. Let's forget it. Why don't you help me carry this stuff downstairs? You get all 3 cookies out of the drawers, he said. I'll move the furniture around. This is a big closet, of course, but I can take it apart. Kelly went down the stairs with a pile of towels and linens. She didn't know that her husband Sebastian was standing outside the house, peering cautiously through the window, and she didn't care about him. A new life had begun to boil around her. It began to delight. She had a house just waiting to be put in order. She had a friend, she was going to have a baby. There was plenty to do, just time to turn around. David, she shouted, and you and I will be friends, and we will be friends. He answered from above. And we'll help each other, and then we'll help each other as it happens. But we'll be friends and help each other. Kelly smiled and tossed a pillow in her hands. Sebastian stood in the light Russian rain. Why does it always rain in this village? Or did it just seem that way to him? He watched Kelly run up and down the stairs, and some man who looked to be her age dragged furniture from the attic. They put it in their rooms, talking and laughing happily. They seemed to be having a good time together. Kelly. Oh, Kelly, why did you leave? Did you really go to this guy? I didn't think about the baby. Who knows, maybe his mother was right when she said he wasn't right for the background. She was drawn to this house all the time, and he didn't even notice. Maybe it's better for them to break up. She's happy here. You can see it in her face. She's so happy, even her eyes are shining. Would he be able to live here? No, definitely not. Sebastian knew for sure. He's a city dweller. He's scared of the silence, the big sky with low stars. He's scared and uncomfortable in such an open space. The child suddenly remembered he was having a baby with Kelly. But the thought was like a wave that came on and rolled back. So, a baby? Would the baby be better off with its mother? Would the baby be his? It wasn't overnight that Kelly decided to leave. And this guy didn't just materialize out of thin air either. Maybe his baby Sebastian's gonna be here too. The raindrops had already gotten behind the collar of her t-shirt and were dripping down her back. It was time to head back to town. The bus would leave in half an hour. Sebastian walked along the rain-swept road and left the 5 years he had lived behind him. Strangely, it didn't bother him much. There was no resentment, no jealousy, no disappointment. It was just that something had ended, and one had to move on. Something had ended. Love. And was there love? He didn't know the answer.